Everyone is at a different trajectory in their investment career or timeline. If you're just starting off, what I would say is don't get discouraged, continue to educate yourself. But while you're in the trenches, look around for professionals to build your team.
What if you could be your own bank? Stop losing money to lenders and take control of your financial future. The infinite banking concept, or privatized banking as we like to call it, empowers you to grow and protect your wealth by using a properly designed dividend paying whole life policy. It's not just insurance, however, it's a strategy for creating a personal monetary system, a personal banking system, if you will. It's a concept. Imagine earning interest on money while still using it to invest, pay off debts, fund opportunities. With IBC, you can achieve financial freedom on your terms. Learn how the process works at practicalwealthsolutions.net. Click the button, Be the Bank, and start building wealth the smart way. All right, hey, welcome to another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. So today we're diving into the fast world of professional property management, a cornerstone of successful real estate investing. And so I'm thrilled to be joined by Odara Jeter, a highly successful property manager with years of experience helping property owners maximize their investments, reduce stress, and navigate the ever-changing real estate landscape. Odara, welcome to the Practical Wealth Show. And let's start out with, tell them what I didn't tell them.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me, Curtis. Really appreciate being able to chat with you today and being introduced to your community. What didn't you tell them was a lot, but at any rate, just to kind of give an introduction as to who I am, my name is Odara Jeter. I have been in real estate for longer than I can remember, but my father started a construction company down in the DMV, which is where I'm from, Oxon Hill, Maryland. And so I've always been able to look at real estate and see a hole in the ground and understand what could be built from that, and understanding how to cultivate land into real estate. So fast forward, I was a dancer in my former life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, professional dancer with Ailey too. And then what brought me here to the Philadelphia area was Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Dance Company. So while I was there for 10 years, towards the end of my career there, I knew that real estate was going to be my next trajectory and my next plan of action forward in my career and in my life. So while I was at Philadelphia, I got my real estate license, started off in residential, then quickly moved over to the dark world of commercial.
Okay.
And worked with a company and built a mixed use commercial developments here in the Philadelphia market. Worked on lease negotiations, private equity funding, construction, everything in regards to that particular asset class. And after that, transitioned over to the brokerage I'm currently at now, which is LYL Realty Group out in Germantown. And I'm the director of property management there. And I also have my own management firm, which specializes in management, construction management, and project management as well. So my career in real estate has a large breadth as far as my capabilities, my skill sets, and also being able to help investors, which I am one myself, in real estate, be able to acquire, maintain, and sustain their portfolios.
There we go. Listen, how long we know each other? Almost a year. I didn't know half of that first introduction. All right, so
Okay, well, it's always good to find out new
it's
things.
always good to find out new. Always surprise me, right?
Yes.
And I tell you, I brought her on, so she's a client, but I could tell from like our first couple of phone calls, because I would hear you, she would like be putting out fires of, or hold on, Curtis, and she's moving people around. I said, wow. And so you how you can tell when somebody knows your stuff, and so I'm good at that. Game recognizes game. Hopefully I know myself too. And I just said, all right, I think that she could be helpful. Most of y'all that are listening are either investors or aspiring investors. And I think, property management is an art. And if you don't manage it right, you're not going to get paid. And there's a lot of, we're both in and around the Philadelphia area, but I think there's a lot of areas with the same challenges. And so what we wanted to do was just kind of get you an expert that you can use as a resource. That's the purpose of this call. So let me ask you this. Let's start out with what would you say is the biggest misconception about property management?
That anyone can do it.
Okay. Clarify that.
Yeah, so I think it's when you're looking at property management on the surface, a lot of clients who I have acquired and who have come to me, and even just prospects, it's like, oh, they think that I'm going to just give the tenant my cell phone. They'll call me when they have an issue. I'll take care of it and I'll collect the rent and everything is done. But to your point, property management is a science and it is an art. And it's a very customer service, forward facing business that you have to have those skill sets for. And I think the sooner that either you have them and you can cultivate them, or this is not what I want to do. I need to be focused on building my portfolio and I'm going to put a professional in place to do it. I think once you're able to decide which part of the road you want to go down with that on, the better, because, you can do all this work by, a great portfolio, build a portfolio. But if you're not able to actually, manage and milk the cow and get your returns, it's all for naught. And, a lot of investors go under because they don't have that capacity or propensity to actually make sure their portfolio is performing.
And it's got to perform.
Mm-hmm.
And so what should they be considering if, let's say, they're looking to hire? What benefits should they look for, and what key benefits should they expect, maybe?
In reference to a property manager?
Property management, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So a couple things to think about when you're looking at transitioning to property management is making sure, first and foremost, that property manager is in alignment with what your goals are as an investor. Because if the way in which you run or what your goals aren't in alignment, then off the bat, like with anything else, the relationship is just going to be rocky and choppy. So I think making sure your professional is in alignment with you, making sure your professional is experienced, right? And making sure your professional is able to be that you can get in contact with them and that they're consistent.
That would be good, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So, the way in which you experience your property manager is going to be telling as to how your tenant is going to experience them. If you can't get in contact with them, if they aren't able to articulate, how they run their processes, who's on their team, what they do when, the rent is late, or like what their steps are, then, it can be challenging to kind of feel good about, okay, I can move forward with this professional. It's, sometimes it's a matter of trial and error. The first property manager you put in place may not work out, and that's okay. But I think, you want to make sure that you're not handing over the keys and just thinking that, okay, I have a manager in place, they can, ride with it. You want to still be in contact with your property manager. With my clients, I have conversations with them quite often to answer any, questions that pop up, but also too, just to do check-in calls to make sure, hey, this is what's going on with the property. So I make sure I'm available to have those conversations and see how we need to pivot and shift, because that's what life is about.
Right.
When we need to, in reference to the portfolios.
I think, a lot of times, you talk about check them out or doing due diligence, right? Example. And I think that a lot of people don't even know, like, they don't know what to ask. Like, so when you say that, it's like, it's easy to get somebody just going to collect the first and last month and put them in there so they can get their commission. But that might be the only money you ever see. If this person doesn't, like what you're saying, they don't have a process. If they don't, how do they stay? I guess that's the question. So how do you stay in touch? Like, to me, it seems like they should have like a checklist, 4, 5, 6 questions that if they're interviewing, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with that? Do you?
Yeah. So just to be clear too, I want to also point out, there's a difference between a leasing agent who is going to acquire tenants for you and place them, right? And there's a different skill set of a property manager who is going to take, those prospects from tenancy throughout the life of the property to turnover when it's necessary. So those persons and professionals can be the same, which is what I am. I'm able to do leasing and management. But I want to make sure that we're not conflating the two, that someone leased the property and now they're going to manage it. So those are two different professionals, or it could be the same person. So, but to answer your question in reference to like, what questions would you want to ask? I would say first and foremost is, what is your skill set or your experience? because commercial real estate is different than residential real estate. Mixed use is different. So it really depends on what asset class you're looking to have managed. So I think that is a great first question is, what is your experience? Also understanding is, what are their systems, right? If they're doing this and you in Excel and they're, trying to manage a lot of moving parts, if you need to call, your CPA is calling you saying, hey, I need, a P&L, I need a rent roll, I need an income statement, and they're not able to generate that information, then that's another thing. So you want to understand their systems. How are they collecting rent? Is there an option for the rent to be paid online electronically? What happens in reference to if the tenant is late? That is so important to understand what their process is.
Right.
If the month comes, the tenant doesn't pay by the 5th or whatever date you have in your lease documents, what's next? If they can't articulate what the process is all the way down the line, then that's a challenge. I wouldn't say a red flag, but it's a challenge you want to overcome and
Right.
think about if you feel comfortable with that professional, because that's going to happen. It's inadvertently going to happen. Someone's going to be late. Someone's not going to pay. So you want to make sure there's a process in place. And you want to make sure, who are you going to be interfacing with? And who is the tenant going to be interfacing with? And who is my point of contact? When I have a question, an issue, a challenge, who is my point of contact? And make sure that person is available for the questions you're going to have. And understand the girth of their team. Who's on their team, what are their roles, and those, things as well. So I think those are some very first point questions to inquire about and understand.
That's great. I think so. Two things pop up when you say that. One is, I don't think people, like, a lot of times I end up find myself coaching people come out of these real estate classes. They didn't spend 10, 15,000 and up for. They don't have a strategy of what they want, what success looks like. So I guess you just gave us some good points. What do you want? You want to become financially free? Well, how many doors does that take? How do you acquire? Because I don't think they have like rules. Sometimes I find that until they've been beat up a little bit. And then it's like, oh, okay. Then your stuff starts making sense. What Odara is make sure they, maybe we can save them some pain, from the get-go. What was my other point? The other point was, let me keep going because it just left me. The it's live, guys. All right. So what are some of the common mistakes that property owners make when they try to manage their properties on their own?
One of the biggest mistakes I see is that the property owner tries to be the friend of the tenant.
Oh, yes.
And I think it's important, whether you are self-managing or we're talking about self-managing now. If you're self-managing, from the beginning, you have to set up this as a business relationship. It's not nasty. It's not contentious, but this is a business relationship. You have to have very clear documentation from a lease standpoint, from an addendum standpoint, everything in place, communicate very clearly, have things in writing, not through conversations. If you have a conversation, you follow up with an email, have things in writing. And remember for yourself, yes, you're doing this, whatever your philosophy is as a investor. Like when I think about my portfolio and my properties, I'm doing this as a business. Okay. And we're here to make money, and there's nothing wrong with making money, but you also have to make sure in doing so that you have those processes in place. So that is the number one thing. I find a lot of times it's like they're coming to me because they're like, the tenant's calling me at 11 o'clock at night. And, there's this different relationship that has been set up where it's not set up in a business format to where you have outlined, this is how you're going to treat this relationship, and this is how I'm going to treat this relationship. You must set up those expectations from the beginning.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
And let's piggyback on that. So we're in a city, Philadelphia, was to name it, and there's probably other cities like this in nationally, as you hear this, that are very tenant friendly.
Yes.
And so if and the renters know the game, right? So they know, and you could, and so you could get yourself put in jail, because it would really piss me off to have somebody, I'm paying for them to live in my house, right? So that's why I would need to get out of it, because I'm already going to be upset. Right?
You're going to take it to the streets.
Right. And I'm not even a street guy, you know. It's like or I knew people that were like take the door off the hinges, right? or cut the power cord from the, you know, not from the pole, right?
Right.
So they'll have no power. And then I've seen people, they do that, but then they figure out to go up on the roof and hot wire it into the house. I mean, squatters do that. So anyway, that, you know, I've had horror stories personally, and I've seen it. But what was the point of that? So like, what do you say to those people that are living? I think it doubles down on why it's so important to have discussion up front and selection. Talk about that.
Yeah, so that is, so a couple things to this question, right? So there are things, there are people we call them professional tenants. Okay, who, if you're not up on your game and your education, they will know the law better than you do, right? So it's important that you're getting into an industry of real estate. Real estate is an umbrella. Yes. We're specifically focused on investing in real estate and being a landlord. So that's the lane we're in right now. So if that is going to be the lane you choose, you have to educate yourself as much as possible to understand what you're doing, how to do it, and if you don't want to do it, who to hire to put it in place. So I say all that to say compliance is key. You know, renting out a property, making sure you have your rental license in place, that is legal and set, because God forbid you have a tenant who does not pay, you can't even initiate an eviction without a rental license. So you're already behind the 8 ball. So understanding and making sure that you're properly licensed, that you're sending out your rental suitability certificates prior to the tenant moving in, that you have your lead safe certificates done. So it's really about making sure on the front end that you as the investor have done your work to make sure you have all of your paperwork in place so that you can stand on business. And you know that if something does happen, because it will, that you actually have the proper documentation in place to, you know, make the effective change that you need to if necessary. And in addition to that, you know, when it comes to outlining, you know, what the relationship is going to be, that's why it's so important to make sure your leasing documents are properly outlined so that there's not a lot of gray, right? That's why leases went from 1 page to now they're multiple pages, because stuff has happened. There's been, you know, different lawsuits and et cetera. So it's important to make sure not only do we have a lease, we have multiple addendums, whether it's pet addendum, rooftop addendum, you know, tenancy compliance addendum, lead addendum. Like there's so many addendums that go into the lease package itself, because you're also trying to cover and mitigate the what ifs. Right. And, you know, have a welcome packet. What is your move-in process? What is your checkout process? Not checkout, I'm sorry. What is your turnover process? What's deemed an emergency? Who to call when there's an emergency? So you have to make sure, again, you are teaching your tenant how to operate. And the more information you can give them, then you can reference back, hey, page 5, section 7 says X, Y, and Z. And you can outline what that is as you're moving along.
Wow, that she's just dropped a series of gems of that. I would add to that, since, you know, my thing is insurance, like, do you require as part of the packet, okay, look, here you should have your own, what's it called, the tenant renter's insurance, and maybe give them a couple of places to go to get it, and can you require that?
Yes, you can. So renter's insurance is a requirement for us for move-in. They have to have proof of renter's insurance, and if they don't have renter's insurance, there is a liability insurance that comes over into that the tenant pays into as well, which doesn't cover their contents, but it covers the box, which is the, you know, the asset. So it's very important, you know, to make sure that your tenant does have renter's insurance, and that's a part of our addendums as well.
Okay, I love that. I love that. Okay, let's talk about, because I want to kind of highlight stuff that you've had to deal with. So as the manager, right? So what challenges do you face as a property manager, and how do you overcome them? Can you think of anything that comes to mind?
We have
I don't want to say horror stories, but stories.
Yes, I mean, it's funny. I mean, that we've had the widest gamut of things that have happened. Sometimes, like at this point now in my career, like when things happen, I just kind of chuckle at it, and then you like go into action, right? I mean, there's sometimes you have to be the therapist or the mitigator when you're in a communal living situation, how you navigate tenants, living together. And then, when it comes to, I'm trying to use the most recent example. We had a tenant where they were smoking heavily in their unit, smoking something they shouldn't have been smoking, and we had to mitigate that. And again, goes back to paperwork. It was an easy conversation, and obviously I had a level-headed tenant, but I was able to point to them, hey, there's no smoking in your unit. Page 5 of the exhibit, X says this, and this. And I'm able to communicate that. And then the tenant is able to realize, oh yeah, you're right, I won't do that. So it is a matter, again, going back to the paperwork and the language, being able to make sure you have all of those things lined up. So you're not getting into, well, I thought it was this, or, I thought it was that.
Right. Okay. That's good. Let me ask you, so continuing on that, how do you stay on top, or how does one stay on top of because to me, this is a argument for why they should not try to do it themselves. But how do you stay on top of the changing laws, regulations, market trends, to protect your client's investment?
Education. I have a network. Your network is your net worth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a network of individuals. I'm not going to know everything, but even as things are like real time happening, I'm communicating with, other investors. I'm communicating with other realtors, other real estate professionals. So there's things that we're, communicating about and having dialogue on, and just being in the market, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like real time things happening is a part of that as well. So it is important that, whether you're doing it yourself or whether you have a professional doing it, that they do have their finger on the pulse, because laws change often, as we saw when it was, excuse me, when we were in the midst of COVID. We had moratoriums on evictions. Things just recently changed in reference to the eviction diversion program in the Philadelphia market. So there's a lot of things you have to make sure that you are aware of, because you can't stand in front of a judge and just say, I didn't know.
Right. And I'm trying to hear that. Can you share a success story, if you can think of one, where your property management expertise made a significant impact for a client?
Oh yes, definitely. So we had a investor that had I would say it's a smaller portfolio, and they came to us because they did have a challenge with their tenants, because they did have a friendly relationship with them where, the relationship was askew. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
When we come into place, we, for all intents and purposes, the way I manage my properties is I become the face of the landlord, right? In the relationship. So that way it takes the landlord out of the front seat, having to do the day-to-day minutia, which is why I'm there as the professional. And then they can sit back, build their portfolio, or go sit, in St. Martin's, whatever they decide to do. But the success story there was, she had a smaller portfolio and she was having a lot of challenges. Once we came into place and we outlined, again, taught them, this is our process, this is what we're going to do, this is our expectation, and we implement it and we stick to it, we were able to actually make her portfolio cash flow, because our expectations for the tenants was what it was, and they were very clear about it from the beginning when we came on. We were able to collect rent efficiently and effectively and on time. And therefore, she was able to actually, meet her need for her ROI and have a, cash flowing portfolio,
Okay.
which is the goal.
Which is the whole point. That's right.
Yeah. So yes.
That's awesome. That's the thing. You have all this stuff. I'm thinking of a person right now that's addicted to buying them, but don't develop them or make them cash flow. He's like, that person has a lot of cash and they just, okay, it's a good deal. They buy it. I was like, dude, you gotta, I might somehow want to turn you on.
Now you got to turn the lights on.
You gotta turn the lights on, right? So let me ask you this. What advice would you give to property owners looking to maximize their rental income and reduce vacancies?
I would definitely say, for sure. So screening is key.
Screening.
I would rather have a vacant unit in my portfolio than a tenant who's in there that's not going to pay. Okay. It's not just about getting your first, last, and security. You want to get that, yes, but you also want to get your continuous rent throughout the tenancy of the lease. So 3 of the biggest factors for owners or landlords is three of their biggest ticket items is turnover.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the repairs and etc. If you have a delta between security deposit and the type of damage that the tenant has caused, it's evictions. Okay, because it's costly to do an eviction, and also the time frame it takes. It's not something that you put your eviction in and then they're out the next month. Anyone
Mm-hmm.
that has been in this business long enough knows that's not a real reality. And the other is delinquencies.
Mm.
So, in order to stave off that as much as possible, it's so important. These are the two holes that I'll look at. You and I talk about buckets, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can't fill the bucket if you have holes at the bottom,
That's
right?
right.
So, in order to plug those holes, it's about tenant screening and tenant retainage. Okay. The better screening you have in place, the better you can weed out and mitigate the type of tenants who possibly would not pay you, who possibly would be, and it's not just about payment, who are not going to live communally in the space properly, who aren't going to communicate with you. So it's really about screening, and having a actual set rental requirement that you have in place, that it's not flexible, where this is my cousin, but then he said that, like really being stringent about this is what the same way you have a buy box for purchasing your properties, have a rental requirement box for these are the requirements that this tenant has to fit in. Make sure they're legal.
Right.
This is the box that it has to fit in. Okay.
Can't send Guido by to collect the rent if you're behind right now. Okay.
Yeah. So having your rental requirements in place, and then on top of that, in reference to retainage, making sure you're performing throughout their tenancy. If there's a repair it. If there's an issue, address it, because those are some of the things that, aside from outside forces that you can't control, like if someone gets relocated, but that's another reason why tenants will move if it's a contentious, or if you're a landlord that is just not present and available to address their needs. So to retain that tenant, making sure you're maintaining that relationship and that tenancy throughout, throughout them residing there, to make sure that they're happy tenants. Because as little turnover as you can do, if you're turning units every year versus every 2 or 3 years, that's a difference on your bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, I want you to brag on yourself a little bit. So what's your you talked about this a little bit earlier. What's your property to look for in a property management company, and what sets Odara's business apart from the typical manager out in your mind?
In my mind, I am task oriented. I am organized.
For sure.
I'm communicative. I'm communicative. I am transparent, and I'm an investor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it on all those fronts. I run my management the same way I run my portfolio, because I understand the same way the things that I have in place, those work.
Mm-hmm.
They're consistent, they're reliable, and they're legal. So I cut and paste and put that with my clients, because I understand how to do that. And I'm very, like I said before, going back to in the beginning, property management is customer service,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have the proper temperament, and you have to have the proper team and organization in place to make sure you're hitting all those balls. There's maintenance requests coming in, there's rent you have to collect, there's payments you have to process, there's owner distributions you have to make, there's lease renewals, addendums. So you have to make sure that you're, juggling all the balls at the same time to make sure everything is running smoothly.
That's awesome. Let me ask you this. Let's say someone's considering investing in real estate. At what point should they consider professional management, and then this is maybe a different way, Seth, because I've asked you this twice. What role does the manager play in long-term success? So they have one unit, should they start at 3? Should they learn to try to manage themselves a little bit first? What have you found, or what's your opinion?
I think it depends, right? If you are an investor and you feel that you have the temperament and you have the time and you have the team to do it, it's always good to understand the baby, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if you're constantly having someone else teach it to you, you may not know all the ins and outs. And that works for some investors, where they say, okay, I bought a single family home, I'm going to manage it just to kind of get my feet wet, see how it feels, right? That's fine. But as soon as you know, or if you even know before, then you can actually have a better exit strategy to actually have a professional do it. And I would say when you're running your numbers, whether you're going to manage it yourself or whether you're going to have a property manager, put that bottom line number in your numbers so that it's already baked in,
Right.
right? Then you don't have to worry about, oh, I didn't account for that financially. I don't want to pay that fee. But you could be shooting yourself in the foot by not paying the fee. Now you're not even getting rent. So
That's
that's really
yeah.
important.
That's the numbers that tell a story. Like we talk, I know you and I talk about this all the time. Like people don't really watch their numbers. Like they don't look at their P&L. They don't, I don't think they really are in touch with, and I don't know how you manage your business like that. And like, so do your people have, or do you recommend they have like a bookkeeper, or do you like the accountant, they'll have an accountant, they'll want the rent rolls and the P&L, but are you tracking that, or how is that being tracked in the way you like to do it?
Yeah. So in our system, our property management software is AppFolio. So we're able to get, excuse me, as detailed as you need to from an investor standpoint in reference to what, documentation you need for your CPA or for yourself. So, once you're onboarded into our
Or
platform.
for the bank, maybe if I'm trying to do a refinance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me. So, even with the bank, like we have, some of our investors are going for underwriting to build their portfolio. We will show their current assets. So that the bank can kind of get, past performance history, trailing 12s, et cetera. So we're able to generate that information. If you're doing it on your own, you just want to make sure you have a process, no matter, how streamlined or not streamlined, no matter how basic it is. You can start off with Excel and do it. As long as you're doing the work, you can go to a QuickBooks and do it. Just as long as you're doing the work and you're making sure you understand your numbers. Because believe me, if the first comes and you're not communicating with your tenant and they don't pay and you don't reach out to them till the 20th because it's the 20th. I forgot to collect rent.
Right.
They see that. They feel that. And if you're not on them, you're going to be the last one to get paid.
That's right.
So it's really,
I had bills. You didn't ask me.
yeah,
Right.
like what's the first?
Right.
So it's important that you understand, when your money is supposed to come out and when your money is supposed to come in, and that you understand whether you're doing something on auto pay or if you have something that is supposed to come in. Your receivables and your payables, you have to be on that, really.
Yes. So let's land the plane here. So I want you to answer, did anything I forgot to ask you that you want to say? And then I want you to tell them, because I hope you hear you're talking to an expert. And so where you work, who you can help, or, how to reach out to you if they have a question, or let's say you run a real estate investment group. Yeah, I think you got a good guest speaker. All right. So tell yeah, her, not me. All right, and me too, but on a different topic. But what anything I didn't ask you that you want to put out, and then tell them how to find you.
Yeah, so how to find me, definitely Odara Jeter. I'm with LYL Realty Group. And we're in the Germantown area, 6329 Germantown Avenue. So we're right in the Germantown hood. And my contact number, 267-307-7469. That is my bat phone. You can contact me on that. I'm more than happy to engage with you. I'm not here to sell you on anything. I'm really here as a resource to give you information. You can call me, ask questions, as a fellow investor, and if it's not a fit for the both of us, that's fine, but I would like to have the conversation. You can give me a call and we can kind of talk about what are your pain points and see if I can assist in those pain points. And if not, that is okay. And we can talk about, other professionals that may be able to help you. But yeah, it's really about, community and making sure you build a team. None of us can do what we do by ourselves. I don't do what I do by myself. So it's really about making sure you have a team around you. And I would say, for one thing, to answer your question about something you didn't mention, everyone is at a different trajectory in their investment career or timeline. If you're just starting off, what I would say is don't get discouraged. Continue to educate yourself. And that's for, all of us, continue to educate yourself. But while you're in the trenches, look around for professionals to build your team, right? You're going to need a realtor or a property manager. you're going to need a mortgage broker. You're going to need a relationship with a contractor. You're going to need an insurance provider. So you want to make sure while you are learning and growing and deciding what avenue you want to choose in the real estate world, that you really start sussing out and interviewing, your team and who you want to have, so that when you are ready to hit the ground running, that you have them ready to go.
I love that. Guys, let me ask you this. Geographically, how far from our area, the Philadelphia area, can you, or do you want to expand out? Like, is it PA, Jersey, Delaware? Like, or is it mostly the Philadelphia metro area? Because if you're local listening to this, y'all should reach out to her, because you see how awesome she is.
Thank you. That's a good question. So in the Philadelphia market, it's Philadelphia and Delco. And we also, for my other management that I do, I'm also in the DMV area heavy, because, that's my home. Oxon, Maryland is where I'm from. So I have relationships there. My father now has transitioned the construction company over to my brother, who has just taken it to new heights. So, we do a lot of development in the Maryland and DC area as well. So to answer your question, if I can help you in this market, or even whatever market you're looking in, I can have a contact that could possibly assist you there.
There you go. That's what that's. So, because you always want a referral, like and she knows a lot of people in a lot of places, and then she could probably find your needs and then make a good introduction, to kind of sort out who you are, I had a friend calls it your investor DNA, what are your goals. And because a lot of times I'll pick out like an account. I had a client who was a chauvinist. So I had a woman that I loved who was my accountant, but she didn't get along with, she couldn't stand him because of that, and I was like, okay, so now I learned to pick people by their personality, who to connect. So I'm like the dating game of connecting professionals. So I'm like, okay, that's important.
Broker in relationships.
Yeah, apparently. I get paid. I do a lot of stuff that sometimes I'm like the marriage counselor, the business coach, the marketing coach, the financial coach, and I'm not getting paid for 4 of the 5 things I just mentioned, right? So when Odara, she'll coach you too. She's like, well, wait, this is wrong. You need to fix this. Like, so I do appreciate that. Okay, about you. All right. So just so you know, I'm saying it publicly. So guys, listen, we have fun doing this, and I hopefully you see I've brought you a really good resource. So we'll have her contact information in the show notes. And I will have her actually on some other, because she can show stuff like through a presentation. So when I do like more of a lunch and learn type thing, I think we'll have her back on to go into nitty gritty. But listen, she gave you a lot of game. And Odara, thank you for coming on the Practical Wealth Show and enlightening our listeners.
Thank you for having me, and I look forward to connecting with your community.
All right, guys, have a great day. Do you know where your money's going every month? Most people don't, and that's costing you big time. At Practical Wealth, we help you take control of your cash flow with a simple mapping system. We call it telling your money where to go instead of asking where it went. It's a simple system that shows you exactly how to track, manage, redirect dollars towards building wealth, paying down debt, finding hidden money, and having a clear plan to achieve your financial goals. With cash flow mapping, you're in charge, not the other way around. Ready to get started? Visit practicalwealthsolutions.com or go to the link below. Learn how the cash flow mapping can transform your finances today.